MVP. When you look back at the season from hell that the Fever had, none of us expected them to be in this situation. None of us expected them to be winning a very close Game 3.
Imagine if I told you that Caitlin Clark might play in the WNBA Finals. It sounds impossible, don't you think? We have been informed for weeks that her season is over, that she is unable to return due to a groin issue. However, if the Fever advance to the finals, there may now be a legitimate route for Clark to return to the court because of a little-known WNBA rule. Imagine the biggest female basketball star returning to the court on the largest stage in the league. That kind of turn of events has the potential to alter everything. The problem is that it's not that simple. Everything is connected, including the risks, the rules, and the roster moves. Others are certain that this loophole was created for a scenario just like this, while others think it's a complete far shot. We're going to dissect everything today. What the rule really states, why the Fever gave themselves a chance, and how Clark's comeback would affect Indiana's chances of winning a title. Let's begin with the fundamentals. At the start of the season, the Indiana Fever weren't meant to be here. They didn't even make the playoffs, according to the majority of analysts. The roster appeared youthful, battered, and inconsistent. Their season seemed to be over after Caitlin Clark went down. The Fever, however, fought their way into the semifinals and are now only one step away from the finals rather than giving up. Consider the implications of that. Aaliyah Boston has accepted a more significant role. Veteran players like Natasha Howard and Odyssey Sims have provided a solid presence for this club, and Kelsey Mitchell has been on fire. On both ends of the floor, Sophie Cunningham, who many believed wouldn't play a significant role, has contributed toughness and enthusiasm. This group has evolved into the epitome of resiliency. A team has no business winning while you watch them win games. You have to worry what would happen if they were to regain their superstar. And that's the current buzz in Indiana. Supporters are wondering what the Fever could do with Caitlin Clark if they can fight this hard without her. The answer might be unsettling because Clark's presence in the lineup causes Indiana's ceiling to soar rather than simply rise. This is why the entire discussion surrounding her potential comeback is so intriguing. Let's take a step back and review our purpose for being here. Since sustaining a groin injury that kept her out of action weeks ago, Caitlin Clark has not participated in any games. When the Fever announced at the time that she would miss the remainder of the regular season, most people assumed that meant she would also miss the playoffs. Injuries to the groin are complex. Sometimes they go away fast, and other times they persist. Given the amount of excitement surrounding her debut, it is surprising that Clark only appeared in about 13 games this season. It was anticipated that she would dominate the league. And she did for a time. The Fever were unexpectedly becoming the WNBA's must-watch team, selling out arenas, and smashing television numbers. Then the injury struck, and everything fell apart. The fascinating portion, though, comes after. Recovery from groin injuries often takes 2 to 6 weeks, depending on their severity. That timeline is long gone now. Clark has had time for recuperation, training, and perhaps even backstage preparation. This begs the obvious question, why not bring her back if she is feeling well enough? At this point, the topic of rules replaces health. Even though Clark may be eager to go back, it's not only a question of whether her body is prepared. The question is whether the WNBA permits it. And that's where things become somewhat difficult. This is when things start to get interesting. Post-season rosters are locked once they are submitted at the conclusion of the regular season, per standard WNBA regulations. No more 7-day contracts, no more hardship signings, and no more bringing in unemployed free agents. Your submission is your possession. There's a catch, though. A provision in the WNBA permits teams to activate players who are currently under contract but are marked as inactive. This implies that if a spot becomes available due to an injury, players on the injury list, maternity leave, or suspension may theoretically be added to the active playoff roster. And you know what? Caitlin Clark is one of those people. She isn't just any free agent. She has a signature. She has a contract. She also belongs to the Fever Group. People are buzzing because of it. In theory, if another player is injured or the league makes an exception, the Fever might activate her. Now, realize this before we get ahead of ourselves. Rarely are there exceptions. They are not given out lightly by the league. However, the existence of the language indicates that this is not merely a wild imagination. Although the roster deadline has already passed, Caitlin Clark still has a realistic chance to make a comeback in the finals. That's where the whole thing is going wrong. What makes this loophole so important, then? Because it suggests that Caitlin Clark's season may still be going strong. The CBA gives that remote opportunity, but most fans believe the injury announcement was final. You're never completely excluded if you have a contract. Being under team control versus being on the active playoff roster is the main distinction here. If specific requirements are fulfilled, an injured player may remain on the inactive list and still be eligible for activation. In contrast, emergency or hardship contracts expire at the conclusion of the regular season. The fact that this clause hardly ever appears makes it all the more fascinating. There haven't been many players of Clark's caliber in this situation before, signed, hurt, but possibly able to return at the highest stakes. It's the kind of circumstance that makes executives, coaches, and even the league itself reflect carefully. Does the Fever act as a trigger for Clark to play? Would they jeopardize the cohesiveness of the team? Or do they continue to play the same roster that brought them here? This loophole is therefore more than just a legal gimmick. This choice has the power to change how the season concludes. Let's now discuss the gamble. It's never simple to get a player back after a protracted injury absence. The dangers are clear. It's possible that Caitlin Clark is not feeling well. She might hurt herself again. Additionally, her presence might throw off a team's rhythm that is now working. Playoff basketball is not the time to experiment because chemistry is sensitive. Here's the opposite, though. One of the league's most dangerous players is still Caitlin Clark, even at 60%. Defenses are stretched by her shooting. Opportunities are created by her vision. And everyone around her is uplifted by her competitive fire. Such an influence does more than merely aid in its transformation. This is a huge reward. The Fever have an immediate advantage over everyone, even the defending champion aces, with Clark on the floor. She compels opponents to reconsider their strategies, modify their games, and show Indiana more respect than they otherwise might. The Fever's willingness to accept that danger is the matter at hand. Do they take a chance on history by betting on their franchise athlete, or do they take precautions to safeguard her long-term health? It's the traditional conundrum. Long-term security against short-term glory. And it's a very difficult decision for a club this close to the championship game. This is where people started to wonder. Only 11 players were submitted by the Indiana Fever for their postseason roster. Given that teams are permitted to carry 12, that is exceptional. Why would they give someone a spot? Some people think this was a planned action. The Fever may have allowed itself some leeway by leaving the 12th spot available, perhaps even purposefully leaving the door open for Clark to return. Why not simply add another depth player to the squad if they had no plans at all? Rather, they relied on the strength of their group and entered the playoffs with fewer players. That raises the question of whether the front desk discreetly moved Caitlin into that space. Although the team hasn't made any public statements, the choice seems dubious enough to spark rumors. It is worthwhile to consider the possibility that Indiana would purposefully go short-handed unless they had a more ambitious plan, since that open roster spot might be the hint that everyone was missing if Clark does indeed have a way back. And it would appear to be one of the most audacious strategic moves in recent WNBA history if the Fever upset the league and advance to the finals. Let's take a moment to be honest. The main concern is whether Caitlin Clark is physically prepared to return, even if the regulations permit it. It takes time for injuries to recover, and the intensity of playoff basketball is entirely different. According to reports, she may not have been running at full speed with the team throughout this run. This implies that her conditioning may not be at its peak and that playing in the playoffs would immediately put her body to the test. She has a serious risk of re-injury if she returns too soon. However, Caitlin Clark is a unique competitor on the other side. She is built for big moments and performs well under pressure. She has been exercising, recovering, and getting ready behind the scenes even if she hasn't been in full practices. She will aggressively pursue the opportunity to play if there is even a remote probability. All of that must be considered by the Fever. Does she have adequate intelligence? Does she have adequate strength? Can she enter the finals and improve the team's chances rather than hurt them? Indiana has the potential to shock the world if the answer is yes. This turns becomes one of the most significant what-if scenarios in WNBA history if the response is negative. For a moment, let's hope Caitlin Clark makes a comeback for the championship game. When facing a dominant team like the Las Vegas Aces, the entire matchup changes in an instant. The defense would be forced to stretch the floor when the Fever suddenly possessed a weapon. Teams may pack the paint against Aaliyah without Clark. Boston and challenge the guards of Indiana to shoot. That strategy fails with Clark. Her shooting range causes defenses to falter, creating space for Cunningham, Mitchell, and Boston. The Fever's offense is much more deadly all of a sudden. Although Clark isn't flawless on defense, her presence allows Indiana to play more quickly, take more chances, and have faith in her ability to initiate transition plays. Even though she isn't at her best, the Fever can still win possessions with to her high IQ and court vision. The buzz alone would be enormous, let's face it. Caitlin Clark returns from injury for the finals. There are moments like that go beyond basketball. TV ratings would soar, crowds would fill arenas, and the WNBA would become the focus of the whole sports world. This is more than simply XS and OS for the Fever. It all comes down to their belief that they can win. Here is an additional layer to the entire scenario. The WNBA itself. Don't even consider the possibility that the league office isn't listening. The biggest celebrity the WNBA has seen in a long time is Caitlin Clark. Additionally, her presence has a direct impact on business. You name it, sponsorships, TV agreements, ticket sales, etc. She makes the difference. The league is in a difficult situation because of that. They want her to be safe and healthy, on the one hand. They cannot afford to risk jeopardizing her long-term career by hurrying her back. However, the finals featuring Caitlin Clark are ideal for visibility and ratings. If more fans tuned in, would the WNBA secretly accept her activation? Maybe. If they believed the risk was too great, would they intervene and shut it down? It's also feasible. In any case, this is not solely an Indiana choice. It can be a discussion involving the entire league. And for that reason, this circumstance is so special. It goes beyond basketball. It concerns branding, business, and the league's future. Which way they tilt could reveal a lot about the WNBA's top priorities at this pivotal time. Let's pull everything together. According to the CBA's little-known rule, Caitlin Clark may theoretically make a comeback for the WNBA championships. She has a contract. She's getting better. Additionally, the Fever left a roster space open, which maintains the possibility. In actuality though, it's still unlikely. She hasn't gone at full speed yet. The Fever might not want to invest their future on a single wager because the risks are substantial. To ensure that nothing careless occurs, the league itself may even intervene. Still, it's clear how important Clark is to the WNBA that we're even having this discussion. Just her presence alters everything, even how spectators crowd arenas and how defenses line up. She would make one of the most spectacular comebacks in league history if she did. The Fever will still be proud of themselves for fighting their way to the finals without her, even if she doesn't. This is the question for you, then. Would you take the chance if you were the Fever? For the sake of making history, would you bring Caitlin Clark back, even if it were only partially? Tell me your thoughts. Thank you for watching, as always. For more breakdowns like this one, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment.